Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from New York, Jeff Greenfield.
Just suppose you bet $10 Sunday that the Chicago Bears would beat the Cincinnati Bengals and that the Buffalo Bills would beat the Miami Dolphins. Well, the good news is both the Bears and the Bills won their games. The bad news is you're out $20 because your teams didn't win by enough points. In the grim words known and feared by millions of bettors, they didn't cover the spread. It is precisely because there are millions of $5 and $10 bets made every week during the NFL season that gambling on pro football is such a big business. How big, nobody knows, but estimates vary between $20 and $25 billion a year. And all you have to do is to pick up a big city tabloid, and you'll find lots of people promising to stuff your pockets with cash by telling you who will and who won't cover the spread. But are there dangers in the friendly little bets in the office pool? A danger to the image of pro football, perhaps a danger to its integrity. Just how intertwined is the popularity of pro football with gambling fever? We begin with this report from Dave Marash.
It's around 6 p.m. Pacific time on Sundays when the NFL betting week begins, always the same way, with the posting of the odds at the Stardust Sportsbook. Bettors line up for the right to get down the first bets of the week. By the time betting's 8-day week is over and the last dollar is down on Monday Night Football, some $3 million will have been bet on the NFL here at the Stardust alone. Nevada's legal bookmakers will have taken in $20 to $30 million on the NFL. And by authoritative estimates, the national handle, legal and illegal, for betting on the National Football League now runs at $1 billion a week. Like most billion-dollar businesses, sports betting is information-driven, not just for fact-hungry bettors, but for odds makers.
Yeah, I have the Redskins 3. I could see the game going a little higher. The public, they like to bet the home team on Monday night, and I could see the game going at 3.5.
Yeah. Perhaps the most generous generator of sports information is the NFL, and they do it on principle.
We're trying to take away what they call the edge. These little groups of people that would let you to believe that they have the inside track. And we'd like to take all that away, make it public for everybody.
There are just two ways for a bettor to get an edge: inside information or a fix. For 40 years now, the NFL has maintained an intelligence network to track the gambling markets and report any suspicious activities.
We have representation in each of our league cities, and obviously we have a special representation in Las Vegas. We also have some former DEA officials that work for us, so that we are covering on the intelligence side both organized crime, gambling, and drug activities all over the country.
But the NFL doesn't use just former law enforcement officers for its intelligence network. It uses people like Gilbert Lee Beckley, the biggest bookie of the 1960s, the Mafia's bookie.
He was connected, mob connected, which everybody knows.
I believe that's an accurate assertion.
William Hundley signed Gil Beckley on as his source, and later signed a letter to Beckley's probation officer asking for a lighter sentence on a federal gambling conviction.
He was just one of many bookmakers and whatnot that I used as sources when I was with the league.
Gil Beckley used his association with the NFL as protection. I'm saying that he used the NFL as a means of trying to get a sentence reduced. Gil Beckley was owned by Michael Coppola and later by Tony Salerno, two New York Mafia guys in the Genovese crime family.
Warren Welsh says he still counts organized crime bad guys among his intelligence sources.
In order to find out what's really happening, you've got to talk to the people that are doing the action.
Yeah, and you didn't put the NFL up yet, did you? And what's tomorrow's games? Hang on just a minute, please.
Lem Banker is a legal and honest Las Vegas gambler. His home attests to his success and to his appetite for information.
119. Give me a rundown what's left, please.
Banker bets by phone, monitors betting by phone, and reports regularly by phone to Warren Welsh. Recently, he reported this NFL nightmare, a plausible scenario for a fixed game, a scenario supported by circumstantial evidence.
Last year, Green Bay played at Minnesota, October 16th. A few months ago, somebody told me they made a big score in this particular game. I said, what happened? He said, a group of people, he never mentioned their names, poisoned the Minnesota Viking team, and they couldn't perform well.
The first thing that I did was contact sources in Las Vegas to see exactly what happened to the line on that particular game. There was very, very restricted movement on that game. Thereafter, we had the game looked at by experts on the football side.
Had the game been fixed? Minnesota in purple here, a 10-point favorite, playing at home, lost to a poor team by 20 points. And just 2 weeks before, the Vikings had been hit by food poisoning.
It was specific sandwiches eaten in the post-game locker room.
Could it have been sabotage?
Not only was there no evidence, but that the likelihood of it occurring the way it did is almost impossible.
Did the food poisoning affect the Vikings' play? Not against Green Bay, but the previous week against Tampa Bay. Star defensive tackle Keith Millard was so sick he couldn't finish the game. Would you have bet against the Vikings if you knew perhaps a dozen of them had spent the previous week suffering from severe stomach cramps, high fever, and diarrhea? You might have if you knew, but if you depended on the NFL's illness and injury list, you wouldn't have known. The list never mentioned the Vikings' food poisoning.
I don't think we should go back and fault the Vikings. The report actually is issued by the league office, and if somebody wants to second-guess that decision, we'll take the blame for that.
Was there evidence that someone did cash in by betting against the food-poisoned Vikings? Lem Banker says yes. Warren Welsh says no. And 4 authoritative sources we consulted agreed with Welsh. But that was then, and this is now, 1989, the season of the Oregon State Lottery's brand new NFL betting game, and the league doesn't like it. To Oregonians, this game may be a chance to win a few bucks or $1 million, picking 4 to 14 winners off a card of the week's games. But to the NFL, it's the chance that more fans will come to care less about who won or lost the game than they do about whether or not they won or lost their bet on it. I'm Dave Marash for Nightline in Washington.
When we come back, we'll talk to author Dan Moldea, who's just published a book on organized crime's influence in professional football, to professional oddsmaker Roxy Roxborough, an advocate of legalized sports gambling, and to Warren Welsh, Director of Security for the National Football League.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by MAYTAG.
Last year, 6 million people bought a refrigerator 1 year too soon. Introducing the new refrigerator from MAYTAG. Buy one now, and if it stops working before the year 2000, we'll buy it back. See your MAYTAG dealer for details. See a MAYTAG repairman in our commercials. The new refrigerator from MAYTAG. The dependability people.
I should be dead. Last year, as I was driving home, I approached a hill. I saw something more frightening than anything I have ever seen. I tried to get out of its way. It was too late. I had a head-on crash with a 28,000-pound truck. I'm still alive today because of an airbag in my car.
Allstate supports airbags because they save lives and lower insurance costs.
Larry Zonka, 3 straight Super Bowls. After that, he went to sea. Sports personalities, as well as our own team of sports instructors, help host Norwegian Cruise Line cruises. No other cruise line has such an all-star lineup. The pleasure ships of Norwegian Cruise Line. The best vacation you've ever had. Plus, contact with someone like number 39, Larry Zonka.
Now's the time to say yes to Oldsmobile's model year-end sale. Say yes to Cutlass quality from just $99.95. Say yes to 2.9% financing or up to $1,500 cash back. So beat the 1990 price increases and say yes to sensational model year-end savings. At your new generation Oldsmobile dealer, there's no better time to say yes.
This is the new generation of Olds.
It may be mightier than the pen or the sword, Video in the hands of the people is changing history. Television revolution in a box. The Koppel Report, Wednesday.
Joining us from our Washington Bureau is Dan Moldea, an author who's been investigating and writing about organized crime for 15 years. His new book is called Interference: How Organized Crime Influences Professional Football. With us from Las Vegas, Nevada is professional odds maker Roxy Roxborough, president of Las Vegas Sports Consultants, which provides odds to legal booking operations in Nevada, Oregon, Mexico, and countries overseas. And here in our New York studios, Warren Welsh, a former FBI agent who now serves as Director of Security for the National Football League. Mr. Welsh, let me begin with you, just to clear one of the decks. Is there any question in the mind of the NFL that millions of fans follow this game as much for gambling as for the joy of seeing their team beat another team?
I don't think that's correct. We have tremendous fans all over the country, and we think that most of our fans go to watch the ball game and could care less about the point spread.
Well, let me just push this for a minute. I can't tell you how many games I've watched where in the waning minutes, when victory is assured, the fans are screaming and yelling for a meaningless field goal, which just coincidentally happens to put the spread, happens to let their team cover the spread or beat it. I mean, as I say, isn't there a concession on your part, even by virtue of your own operation within the league, to provide information that $1 billion a week, that's a lot of people following for gambling, no?
That's certainly correct. There are an awful lot of people that do gamble. We still feel that the majority of our fans are spectators. They go to our game and they watch our game because of the tremendous skill of the athletes.
Okay, Dan Moldea, I want to cover the other side of this. Your book has a lot of things to say, not entirely complimentary, about organized crime in the NFL. You do not, as far as I could see, and I may have been too hasty, specifically saying that you can point in recent years to a fixed game. Is that correct?
I say that there's no fewer than 70 NFL games that have been fixed, but my major target in the book is the documented history of the relationship between the NFL team owners and a variety of organized crime figures and members of the gambling community. What I'm basically saying is that the NFL, despite its protest, is in fact encouraging gambling and promoting it because they know it's good for the NFL team owners and for their pocketbooks.
Well, let me pursue that. I mean, clearly there are people who have owned or have owned NFL teams who got their start in one way or another in the gambling fraternity. But if the NFL today were totally, absolutely opposed to gambling, thought it was the worst thing in the world for it, what could they do? How do you stop office pools?
I'm not Pollyannish about gambling. I gamble myself on occasion, but I gamble man to man. I bet with one person, with another person. There's no illegal third party taking a piece of my bet. I believe in, if you have to bet what you can painlessly afford to lose with a friend, not with an illegal bookmaker, because when you do, a piece of your ass is going to end up in the pocket of some mafia guy. What I'm saying is that the NFL understands that gambling is going to enhance its revenues. I interviewed Alex Karras for this book, and he told me gambling made football what it is, and he's probably right.
What I'm asking you, Mr. Moldea, is not whether you think that betting with bookmakers is a good or bad idea, but what, if the NFL thought it was the worst thing in the world for it, what could they do to stop the interest? It is a game unlike baseball or hockey with a lot of points, a lot of action where you can bet a spread. What could they do?
I think one of the things they can do is start policing their own ownership within the league. You have Baron Hilton, who's a minority owner in the San Diego Chargers, who owns the largest sports book out in Las Vegas, the largest sports bookmaking operation in the country.
Illegal one, correct?
It's a legal one.
Legal.
Nonetheless, Baron Hilton, when he tried to get a casino license in Atlantic City, was denied because of his relationship with an organized crime figure by the name of Sidney Korshak. Yet he's permitted to keep his interest in the NFL. And I think there's basically a situation where we have people like Pete Rose, who is an employee, being treated by one standard, and people who, in the world of professional football, people like Baron Hilton, Edward J. DeBartolo, and other NFL owners, who are treated by a completely different standard altogether.
All right, I want to turn to Mr. Roxborough in a minute, but I can't forbear from picking up on the point you said earlier. Are you talking about games that have been fixed within recent history, recent NFL history, last 10 years or so?
I'm saying that the last games I have where there's allegations of fixed games were 10 years ago. There were 8 games that were allegedly fixed by 2 referees who were paid $100,000 each for each game by a New York Mafia guy, and their job was to basically make sure that that Mafia guy covered the spread.
Mr. Welsh, quickly, what do you have to say about those allegations? Have you looked at Mr. Moldea's book? Can you respond to them?
I have, and I would like to say that in contact with law enforcement sources, that the informant that Mr. Moldea refers to is termed a pathological liar by the FBI.
Well, the IRS has a different feeling about him, Warren, and basically they viewed him as being credible, and the IRS believed that the investigation itself concluded that the games were indeed fixed. They had the information in advance of the games on those 8 fixed games.
Let me ask Roxy Roxborough, I'm sorry, Mr. Roxborough, as a man who makes his living helping to create the spread, do you think that there are instances where recent NFL games, say in the last 10 years, have in fact been fixed?
No, absolutely not. We think the game out here is totally on the square. And, you know, we share the same concerns as the league here because we have the same common goals, and that's the integrity of the game. We're taking large bets out here. You can bet $40,000, $50,000 at a crack on an NFL game, and we need to be assured that the game is on the square, and we believe it is. Otherwise, we wouldn't be taking these large bets.
Yeah, I assume that contrary to perhaps some of the mythology, that if fans believe that games were indeed fixed, your action would drop rather precipitously. Is that right?
Well, of course. First of all, the fans would lose confidence in the game, and they wouldn't go to the games. And the gamblers would lose confidence in the games, and they wouldn't bet them. And we know that's not the case.
All right, we're gonna take a break right now, and when we come back, we want to talk about the broader question of whether, in fact, the NFL encourages gambling as a way to draw fans and ratings. We will continue this discussion in just a moment.
What's it like driving your new Eagle Talon with an intercooled turbocharger?
Ever dream you could fly?
Sure. Do you?
Not anymore.
Individuals performing together, listening, arranging, building. At Northwest, our performance is helping you do business, getting you wherever you need to go on time, creating new ways to make things work for you. Because our job is helping you do yours.
You know, a lot of my friends are really amazed at all the technical advantages of the Eagle Talon.
Really? Name one.
Larry.
Is it another Jonestown? A religious group is allegedly stockpiling weapons and building bomb shelters for a nuclear war they say will begin October 2nd. Religion or cult? On the next Oprah Winfrey Show.
And then on In Person, why does singer Maria Moldea want to go to jail? This is Paul Berry. We'll talk to the artist live in our studio and find out why she chose a D.C. women's prison as one of her local concert sites.
Oprah, tomorrow at 4, followed by In Person at 5.
Imagination takes flight as Walt Disney's World on Ice brings to life the classic tale of Peter Pan in a way you've never seen before. Soar with Peter and Tinkerbell as they lead your family on a magical journey high above the rooftops of London to a wondrous place called Neverland. Second star to the right and straight on till morning. Join host Mickey Mouse and take off on the family adventure of a lifetime at Walt Disney's World on Ice, starring Peter Pan. Coming to the Washington Convention Center October 3rd through 8th. Tickets on sale now at the box office and all Ticketron outlets.
The adventures of Nick, a teen, the last of the red-hot buttheads. Yeah. On his way to school each day, unlike the other passengers, Nick was constantly being encouraged to stick his head out the window. And in gym class.
No fair. We had the butthead last time.
Too bad. We want Norman.
That Norman kid must be a lot better ball player than he lets on.
Poor Nick.
Mercy. Man, what a drag.
Don't be a butthead.
Dropouts, pregnancy, drugs. Our kids are in trouble. Barbara Walters with real solutions that could help save a generation. Survival Stories, Thursday.
Tomorrow there's someone new in this old house. Stephen Thomas joins us.
And from Life Goes On, Chris Burke. Plus Arnold Schwarzenegger on Good Morning America tomorrow.
Continuing our discussion now with Dan Moldea, author, Roxy Roxborough, oddsmaker, and Warren Welsh, security director for the NFL. Mr. Roxborough, let me start with you. You help set the odds. You're the one who tells the American gambler what the odds are, whether Detroit's a 5-point favorite over Green Bay. Is it your sense that the love of the bet, of the wager, is an integral part of what makes the NFL such an attraction for millions of sports fans?
Well, I think it's something to do with it, but I don't think it's the main thing. Sports betting is growing tremendously, and not just in Nevada, all over, and it's not necessarily just NFL. It's growing because it's good, low-cost entertainment, and that's the main reason it's growing.
Low-cost entertainment. I look at the situation in Oregon right now, Roxy, and the only thing I respect about the Oregon betting lottery is the fact that you're setting the line. A man I trust, a man I admire, a man who I know is honest is going to be setting the line.
Could I just interrupt Dan and explain that Oregon has begun this system where a bettor can go to his local grocery store and bet the spread, pick a number of teams, and whether they'll beat the spread, put down a buck or 10 or 20, I guess. Well, I just wanted to clear that up. Well, some of our audience may not be into this.
Right, it started this weekend. It started this weekend. It was very successful, and it's $1 to $20 bets, and I call that entertainment. In fact, I call that better entertainment than going to movies these days.
Dan? Well, that may be true. What I'm afraid of is that Oregon is going to end up educating the public as to how to gamble, how to use the point spread, and everyone's going to realize that Oregon is taking a huge skim of the handle, the total pool of bets, and what the public is going to realize within a few weeks is they can get a bigger bang for their buck from Charlie the bookie, the friendly local bookmaker at the corner bar, who's going to be making him put up $11 to win 10, and is only going to be taking a 10% commission on the losing bets he books.
Dan, that's not always true, Dan. First of all, the Oregon odds are pretty good. In fact, as parlay cards go, some of the odds are much higher than illegal bookmakers. And also, where should the money go? Should it go to an illegal bookmaker to buy a new Cadillac, or should it go to fund the intercollegiate athletic sports in Oregon, like it does with the lottery up there?
Well, what I'm saying is that, Roxy, is that the Oregon lottery is going to cause a proliferation of illegal bookmaking and organized crime activity, and I think in recent cases the evidence is clear on that.
Can I I'd like to bring Warren Welsh, who represents the league, into this. Mr. Welsh, your league was very down on this idea of Oregon's, right?
We certainly were, and our premise is, why use the National Football League to promote betting? We just don't like it. We certainly encourage new fans to come our way, but we certainly don't need new bettors.
Warren, why didn't you file a lawsuit against Oregon before they started taking your product and selling it? I mean, why didn't the NFL file suit as they did in Delaware back in 1976 when Delaware had their own disastrous lottery? Why hasn't the NFL taken some legal action? And I don't think you've taken any legal action against Kentucky, which is going to have its own NFL lottery next month.
Our lawyers are continuing to review this case, and we have many options open to us.
Well, Warren, we're not singling you out, too, because we plan to do some other states are looking at other sports like basketball and baseball, so it's just not the NFL.
But I guess the fundamental question is, if, in fact, $20 to $25 billion is wagered just on professional football bets, then what is the harm to the NFL? I want to start with you, Mr. Welsh. In Oregon saying, okay, we'll take some of this action and fund sports and colleges. I mean, the betting is going on, and you know that better than any of us. What is the harm in the state doing that? Tell us specifically.
We don't need to encourage more betting. I think what it really is just a training ground for new bettors and possibly even new bookmakers.
I agree with Warren on this. I think the American public has this incredible ability to separate gambling, both legal and illegal gambling, from organized crime, to separate drugs from organized crime. And I think we're going to have to come to a point to understand that organized crime is the problem here. And once organized crime influences these situations, we find ourselves where these sports or any institution that has been penetrated by organized crime is thereby compromised.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to focus in on the question, if all this action is going on, why shouldn't we have national legalized gambling on NFL and other sports games? We'll be back in a moment.
Whoever said diamonds are a girl's best friend never saw gems like these. Ruby red strawberry cheesecake, flawless chocolate mousse, precious brownies. Treat yourself. Weight Watchers desserts are a girl's best friend.
They were the biggest men I'd ever seen. They lifted my mama's couch like it was a toy. I ran to my room, but it was gone. But my mama was still there.
If you die, will they have to say goodbye to your house as well? Ask an Allstate agent about mortgage protection and make your family a promise. We'll help you keep.
As we drove away, I watched my house get smaller and smaller until it wasn't there anymore.
Okay, you're trying to decide between the Jeep Cherokee and the Isuzu Trooper. Let's weigh the facts, shall we? The Isuzu Trooper comes standard with four-wheel disc brakes and triple skid plates, more cargo space, a larger fuel tank, and more headroom. Oh, and one more thing. The Isuzu Trooper costs about $1,000 less.
Right now, you can save big bucks on the Trooper during Isuzu's Take It to the Bank sale.
I wanna take
why so many things taste so good.
He's proved to the world just how wild the British can be as a founder of Monty Python's Flying Circus. But now doctor-turned-comic Graham Chapman is back in the hospital, and this time the patient is him.
This feels weird.
On the next Entertainment Tonight, you'll see how this python is winning his battle with cancer.
It's just been a great experience, really, taking part in putting myself back together again.
Graham Chapman, the courageous inside story, is only on the next Entertainment Tonight.
At 7:30 on Channel 7.
Continuing our discussion now on gambling in the NFL. Gentlemen, we're down literally to our last 2 minutes, so I'd like a concise answer to the very simple question. Mr. Welsh, gambling goes on all over America. Why not legalize it if you can't stop it?
We don't need more betting, and particularly on the National Football League. It's a spectator sport, it's an exciting sport, and we don't need more gambling.
Well, that was concise. Mr. Roxborough, you think it's a good idea to legalize the action?
Well, listen, we already have legalized gambling, and we have 43 states with legal pari-mutuel wagering, 31 states with legal lotteries. The states are already in the gambling business. They like it because they're generating revenue for worthwhile causes. So why not generate more revenue through sports wagering for other worthwhile causes? I don't have any problems with it at all.
Dan Moldea, your principal concern is organized crime's influence. Wouldn't legalized gambling diminish the influence of organized crime?
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to enhance it. Basically what I think is happening is that I think there's going to be a law enforcement disaster in Oregon. I think there's going to be proliferation of organized crime activity in Oregon. I think what's happening in the NFL is that the NFL owners want to control the gambling themselves. I think they want to have it right in the stadium, just as you would at a horse racing track, where you could go to a pari-mutuel window and make a bet on your favorite team or any other team that's going on, any other game that's going simultaneously in the league.
That's too bizarre, Dan. Too bizarre.
I think that's coming because I think that's why Jim Finks is being held up as NFL commissioner, because they want a commissioner who's going to be a little more sensitive to the problem of gambling in the
outrageous.
NFL. We'll see.
Mr. Welsh,
okay. Remember where you heard it first.
You have any sense that Mr. Moldea is predicting the future?
Absolutely not. I think he is 100% incorrect.
Talk to Gene Klein, former owner of the San Diego Chargers. He agrees with that. The NFL owners want to control the gambling. They want to control the vigorish.
He's a former owner.
He's a former owner who wishes he could have controlled the gambling and the vigorish. You have to understand that these new owners, the 11 owners who are stopping Pete Rozelle from finally retiring after a fine job that he did, are putting themselves in a position where they're holding a lot of paper, they're holding a lot of debt, they're spending $100 million for their teams. Television revenues aren't going to carry the day for these NFL owners for long.
Gentlemen,
they need the gambling, they need the vigorish.
Gentlemen,
absolutely incorrect.
It's 11 to 5 that we're out of time. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Tomorrow night in this time slot, another in the ABC News series Capital. London, Brazil, and the